Hey Optimancers, Chris here. The Tal'Darai campaign Setting Reborn from Critical Role is now available on D&D Beyond, and in this series I'm looking at the subclasses and feats, and today I'm looking at the Blood Domain Cleric. And let's just get started. As a Cleric subclass, we'll get domain spells, and generally what I like to see on domain spell lists are some non-cleric spells that allow me to do some things with spellcasting that clerics normally aren't great at, like battlefield control options or teleportation options. And we don't really see either of those here, but sleep is a good spell to have at first level, and slow is a pretty good mass debuff at level 5. So this isn't a terrible list, but not overly strong. The theme here are buffs and debuffs, which I suppose is intended to be tied to controlling the blood of the targets with the spells. So let's go over the features, starting at level 1. The Blood Cleric gets proficiency with all martial weapons, and there's no extra armor proficiency. And Bloodletting Focus adds some necrotic damage to any first level or higher damage dealing spell with an instantaneous duration. The amount is 2 plus the spell's level, and it only applies to a target that has blood. So that's going to rule out most constructs, plants, a lot of undead, elementals, and oozes. There's only one spell on the domain list this would apply to, and that's Blight at 4th level. This feature would add 6 points of damage to that spell, and the way I read this, I think this isn't considered part of the spell's damage, so I don't think it would be halved on a successful saving throw against the Blight spell. For a less expensive option, I was originally thinking of Guiding Bolt, but that wouldn't work because its duration isn't instantaneous. So I guess there's Inflict Wounds, so adding 3 damage here on a hit. Though, to get the most out of this, I would think you want Area of Effect spells. That way you can apply the extra damage to multiple targets. Now for clerics, Area of Effect spells with instantaneous durations are slim pickings. I mean, I guess you have the underwhelming Flame Strike. So on a straight cleric, I don't think this is all that good, but here's where I would like this. If I was playing an Evoker, and then dipping Cleric for the armor and shield proficiency, which I very well might do, then this is the obvious domain choice. 5 extra damage on fireballs, and that's going to stack with Empowered Evocation, so I get to put 2 damage bonuses on my fireball. At level 2, Crimson Bond is the Blood Cleric's Channel Divinity feature. Use your Channel Divinity, and it forms a bond with a creature you can see, or for which you have a blood sample. For the next hour, using your concentration, as long as the target is within 10 miles, you can learn the direction and distance of your target, its current hit points, and any conditions it's under, and this uses your action. Or you can use your action and take 2d6 necrotic damage, and the target makes a Constitution saving throw, or you gain the ability to either see or hear through the target's senses for a number of minutes equal to your Wisdom modifier. If it makes the saving throw, this ends the bond. So this isn't something you're likely to do in combat. I mean, there's certainly an advantage to knowing your enemy's hit points, but generally that information probably isn't worth your action. So this would generally be an out-of-combat utility thing, like a way to track down someone for whom you have a blood sample, for example. There's a bit of a Gaze of Two Minds vibe here, though Gaze of Two Minds is likely something you're using on an ally. Well, this feature is something that I think you're more likely to use on an enemy. When I think of how this would be used, it always brings me back to the same scenario. There's some enemy that we're trying to track down, we have a blood sample, and if they're more than 10 miles away, well then I hope they fail their Constitution saving throw. Honestly, I don't love this. And that takes us to 6th level with Blood Puppet, which is another Channel Divinity option. As an action, you choose a large or smaller creature, living or dead, with blood within 60 feet of you. The target makes a Wisdom saving throw or becomes charmed by you. If the creature is unconscious when you use this, there's no saving throw. And presumably, if they're dead, there's no saving throw either. You can then control the creature or corpse. If they're unconscious or dead, it takes its turn immediately after yours. If it's alive, I guess you roll initiative if it isn't in the initiative order already, and then it's going to take its turn on its initiative. Commanding it is free, no action required by you, and you can have it move up to half its speed and use its action to interact with an object, make an attack, or do nothing. If it's unconscious, well then it's not considered incapacitated while it's under your control, and if it's a corpse, it has the statistics it had while alive. If it's conscious, it gets another saving throw at the end of each of your turns to end the effect. Otherwise, you can control it for up to a minute using your concentration. If the creature is unconscious or dead, it cannot take any actions or movement beyond what you command it to do. And then this scales at 17th level, allowing you to target a huge or smaller creature, or a corpse of a huge or smaller creature. So, I'm going to stick a pin in this one. We'll come back to it, because I have opinions that should probably wait until the end. Also, at 6th level, Sanguine Recall allows the Blood Cleric to use their action to recover expended spell slots in exchange for taking damage once per long rest. The limit is up to half your Cleric level, rounded up in spell slot levels, so it's like Arcane Recovery in that way. You take a d8 necrotic damage that can't be reduced in any way per spell slot level recovered. This is actually pretty comparable to Arcane Recovery. The differences are that this requires an action instead of a short rest, but you take the damage. So there's a bit more flexibility as to when this could be used, but if you're using it before a short rest, you're going to expend more hit dice recovering the hit point damage this causes. And this is okay. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's solid enough. And at level 8, all Cleric subclasses get either a damage boost to cantrips or weapon attacks. Here, it's weapon attacks, adding a d8 necrotic, and 2d8 at 14th level. This is not ideal, but if you use Tasha's optional class features, you can just switch this out for Blessed Strikes, which is a good feature. And then the 17th level feature is Vascular Corruption Aura. This is a once per long rest feature that allows you to use your action to set up an aura that lasts 1 minute, where any hostile creature with blood that starts its turn within 30 feet of you or moves within 30 feet of you takes 3d6 necrotic damage, and any healing effects on them are halved while they're in the aura. So I would consider this to be on the weak side. Yeah, there's no concentration, which is nice, but 3d6 is pretty lousy damage by 17th level. And yes, you could possibly apply it more than once per round with pushing and pulling enemies, but you'll get way more value pushing and pulling them through the 15-foot radius Spirit Guardians than the 30-foot radius of this aura. And it's an action to set up, and it only lasts a minute, and it's only once per long rest. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great. And that's the Blood Domain Cleric's features, and it's time to go back to Blood Puppet. Matt Mercer, you've done it again. I had fewer unanswered questions with the Echo Knight. So, the first question that came to mind reading this was, is this supposed to work through walls? Because it does. As an action, you target a large or smaller creature or a corpse within 60 feet of you that has blood. It's not a spell, so you don't need a direct path to the target, and you don't need to see it or hear it or anything. I'm not even sure how you're even targeting it, because it doesn't say. I guess as long as you know it's there. Maybe you do need to see it, but they forgot to add it in the wording. I don't know, honestly, and there's going to be a lot of me saying that. An unconscious creature isn't incapacitated while you control its actions. So does this mean that it's unconscious minus the incapacitated condition? Like what? So does it stay prone? Does it automatically fail strength and dexterity saving throws? Can it move? I mean, I guess it can move because it does say specifically here it can move up to half its speed. And it's not incapacitated, so it can take actions, and all the other stuff about being unconscious, I have no idea. If you are supposed to apply that stuff, then it really makes no sense because you don't apply it if the target is dead. So I guess you kill it to get rid of the unconscious condition? I don't know. And then what if it is a corpse you control? It says here its statistics are the same as when it was alive or conscious. So does it have hit points? What happens if those hit points are reduced to 0? It's already a corpse. Or is it invincible? Is it supposed to be invincible? I have so many questions. And what if it's conscious and we use this and then it falls unconscious? What happens? Do we still control it as if we use this on an unconscious creature? What if it dies? Do we still control it? I have no idea. And if we do, what happens when the conscious creature becomes unconscious? So let's say we're in combat and one of our enemies is an ogre. And the initiative order is our Blood Cleric, then the Party Bard, then the ogre. So let's say we control the ogre, then we make it attack on its turn, then it falls unconscious before our next turn. does it attack again after our turn? And then if the bard heals it, does it attack again on its turn? I have no idea. If so, super abusable, but I don't know how this works. So let's say we're in combat with some revenants, and we drop one of them, so now there's a revenant corpse sitting there, so I use this feature to control the corpse. So is it using the revenant stat block, or is it using whatever stat block it had before it was undead? Before you say whatever stat block it had before it was undead, then let me ask you this. What if the corpse was of a flesh golem stitched together from several corpses? Which stat block do I use then? And let's say it just goes back to its most recent quote-unquote alive stat block, so it's a revenant, and now they're immune to charm. But I already used this feature on their corpse, which wasn't immune to charm. So does it become inanimate again? But if so, then it's not immune to charm anymore. So does it reanimate, or does that end this feature? I have no idea. So I've been ranking the subclasses on a tier chart for how powerful I think they are, but I won't be doing that for the blood domain because this feature might be mediocre. Or it might be abusable as all get out, creating puppets that are invincible with multiple turns per round. This feature seems like such a cool idea, but the rules here are creating more questions for me than they're answering. So, is it fixable? Well, let's see. First off, you need some way to target the target. So, let's say that you have to see them. That's first. Then, the unconscious creature is not affected by the unconscious condition while you control it. I mean, it already says here that it can't move or take actions without your commands, so I don't think there's any issue there. And if the creature is conscious when you use this, and then they become unconscious or die, that should end the control. And if the creature is unconscious and becomes conscious or dies, that should end the control. And if the creature is dead and becomes alive or takes damage, that should also end the control. There's got to be some way to deal with the changing of conditions of alive, unconscious, or dead. Otherwise, you end up with all this mess. And there's got to be a way that if it's a corpse, it can still be taken down, so it's not invincible. So maybe that fixes it. There's so much that's off-kilter here that it might not just be usable at all. One way or another, I don't think there's going to be any Blood Domain Clerics at my table anytime soon. Hopefully the Moon Domain Cleric, which I'm going to be covering in my next video, doesn't have anything like this. Otherwise, until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.